That's a win-win for the university. If they don't have a VPAT, demand one. You can also require testing. There are third-party companies out there that would love to get the business of these companies and do the testing. If they don't have a guide to do a VPAT, provide them one. You'll note that foreign companies refuse to provide VPATs, but you can still ask for accessibility testing, especially if they're from Europe. You know that if there's no information, you have nothing to go on, therefore you might have to do the testing. Now, I don't consider this the responsibility of the disability office. You may have that responsibility placed in an IT department, like my job happens to be. If you get a perfect VPAT, find out if it was filled out by the sales force. That's the most critical bit of information I can tell you on the perfect VPAT. There are a few products that are actually in good standing. The Imperfect VPAT with Detail. These are the type of VPATs that I like to read. They give me information about how something has supported with exceptions, or it gives specific details at locations where things are not accessible. This at least provides me information on how to write an EEAAP. So the product may not be perfect, but at least you have a means of making it more complete. So let's go over VPATs quickly. You want to know your functional requirements for the software, which also includes accessibility. You want to know what products are available so you can compare the accessibility of products. You want to look at their VPATs and review them to see how far along in the process they are of making an accessible product. Then it will help you make a more perfect choice in buying an accessible product. You can also consider exemptions or exceptions, and we'll talk about that now. In our case, we have a list of hardware that we put on our exceptions list, which would include monitors, displays, wireless pointers, keyboards, mice, speakers, cables, USB hubs, etc. These are all the type of pieces of equipment that do not need to be ICT 508 compatible because they're hardware. The exceptions that we have, which actually, since I've done this presentation, we've added another one that has smoothed out the work for me. Exceptions are things that require documentation, and some of the exceptions require an equally effective alternative access plan. Let's look at some of our exceptions here. We have a back office exception, which would include products that maintain or service some piece of technology that are only looked at by a couple people during the year. I had an exception for a radio frequency power measurer device that only a couple technicians looked at. It powered the radio station antenna, but it was not something that anybody outside, no public, no students, no faculty, no staff, except for a couple of technicians. That is what back office is about. Commercially non-available would mean a product that was programmed possibly by a research arm of another school or even our own school. They created some programming to do a particular activity. That is another exception we use. We don't really use the sole brand, but there are times where that kind of overlaps with the commercially non-available. So when a product is commercially non-available and it just becomes available, it may not be available where you can compare products. We also look at our service and maintenance agreements. They're on an exception. We don't have to evaluate that. The fundamental alteration would relate to changing the requirements of a course that would fundamentally change what was needed to do the course, so we don't do that. And of course, undue burden at a university is, in our case, would have to go all the way to the president of the UNC system. Another product that you don't have to look for accessibility information would be an assistive technology that is designed specifically to help people who are disabled. You don't have to make sure that software can work for all students since it's assigned